Are you ready? Okay. So, all right, I'm Dale Henrichs, and I'm from GemTalk Systems, and I'm just realized that, I could probably give like a 10-minute presentation overview of Gemstone, and so I copied some pictures from our manual, and I'm going to wing it. So, now, unfortunately, it could be 10 minutes or 2 hours, so if I get too long, shut me off. Anyway, so this is a picture of the Gemstone process map of what goes on in Gemstone, and it's not your standard. I guess it's not your grandfather's or your father's or your son's. It's not your son's Smalltalk, because basically what Gemstone is aimed at is having very large images. Okay, so we have extents where the image files are stored, and I think our design is something like the design limit is 750 terabytes. But we have customers that are running at 1.5 terabytes image sizes. So very large Smalltalk graphs, object graphs, very large Smalltalk repositories. Go through my notes, make sure I get this. So we got very large images. The next thing is that we have multiple Smalltalk gems that share the object graph. All right. So each of these green things here, or the purple things, are actually Smalltalk VMs, and they all share the same object graph. And so I think our design is to have 500,000. Our design limit is 500,000 gems that can connect to a repository, and in practice, we've got customers that do 15,000 gems running against the same repository. And since we're disk-based, all right, and not memory-based, we have what we call a shared page cache, and bits and pieces. Because obviously, if you have, 100 million element collection, and you load it into memory, into a gem, that gem will have to have that entire collection. And in standard Smalltalk, that's pretty much what has to happen. So Gemstone is able to basically, we use an object table, so the different objects don't point to each other, all right, directly, and that allows us to bring in working sets. All right, so we can bring a portion of a 100 million element collection into a shared page cache that makes that object available to all the different gems that are connected. And the gem itself will copy objects into its working memory, and in that working memory, you have a portion of the objects are actually reified and then worked on. So that's so lots of gems. The shared page cache is limited by memory. And so for a lot of our large customers, like the ones with the terabyte databases, they tend to have a couple terabytes of RAM, and they load the entire database into RAM. And then they have multiple gems that are working on different pieces of the object graph. So there is no image, there's no single process. So in Gemstone, instead of saving an image or stopping an image and restarting, you do transactions. So in Gemstone, when you do a commit, all of the objects that you've changed are written to transaction logs and written to the shared page cache. When the writes to the tran logs are done, your commit's done, and then you can go on. When you abort, we throw away all of the objects that have changed in the VM and then reload from the shared page cache. So, and we have customers that do like 15,000 transactions per second. So I don't know how many gems they're running, but, and so that covers that. Let's see now. Yeah, so I covered the Smalltalk VMs. All right, so this is a picture of basically, running on a single machine. So you've got a stone, your extents, gems running on the machine. These are applications that are running on external machines. And these applications would be a client Smalltalk like VA or VisualWorks. And for those particular clients, we have a product called GBS that allows you to do transparent replication between the database and your client Smalltalk. So in effect, you, as I think Mariano showed, is you can share the same object across multiple gems, all right? And updates that you make in the client code, you do a Smalltalk or Gemstone commit within your client, and all the dirty objects that are stored in Gemstone are written to the Gemstone database in the same way from the clients. So the model is, a big stone machine with applications. We also have the ability to run gems on remote machines. So you have a setup where you've got the stone running in one place, and then you have gems running on other machines, and there's a shared page cache there. So really what goes on here is, for Gemstone, it's a large memory-based Smalltalk, and it can be replicated across the network. And so the customers that are running 15,000 gems, the stone is pretty busy, and you saw in the first slide all those blue processes that I didn't talk about. So there's a lot of those going on. And, so when they have 15,000 gems, they may have 10 or 15 servers where all those gems are running on with their shared page cache. And the next step up for us is when you have remote leaf nodes or application nodes across and multiple application nodes across a slow link. All right, so if this is a cable going underneath the ocean from Europe to North America, we have the ability to have a mid-level cache where you can pull the working set across the slow link, keep that large working set in a mid-level cache, and then have multiple application nodes use this as their source rather than going back and forth across the slow cable. So this is pretty much, what I wanted to say about Gemstone. So I think I might have made my 10-minute mark. But if anybody has questions, yeah. This is where the 2-hour part comes into play.
When I get to run my gem on this supercomputer.
Ah, okay.
And of course, I should run it remotely, unconnected for like an hour or two, a day, a week.
Yeah, okay, all right. That's a good question, and yeah, and I don't know, I don't know if we would be, fit the bill for doing that, but we have a few customers that are actually running JavaScript applications on the phone, and they've written their own local caching when they're disconnected, and then they do reconnect with the stone and ship data across, but they haven't shared that technology yet. One of the, I know. And I feel the same way when I talk to them. But one of the things that we've done is, inspired by that conversation, we did make what we call Topaz Solo. All right. So if we go back to this first slide, when you run a stone, you run a stone repository monitor. There's a bunch of processes that fire off, and let's say you want to write a script in Smalltalk. And so the start of the bash script says, okay, let's fire up all these processes, do 3 + 4, and then shut down all these processes and get the heck out of Dodge. So that's not a realistic way of using Gemstone, but we did come up with what we call Topaz Solo. And what happens there is we have a application. Topaz is this kind of link here. Topaz is our command line interface for working with Gemstone. We rely on our clients to give us GUIs. But Topaz will connect directly to a read-only extent. So you can't commit, but you can read from the extent that you've pre-created. And you've got a live, kind of like a client Smalltalk that you can't save, but you can load things into and run. And that was aimed at, step one towards going to get an executable that could run remotely. And because when you start thinking about a single gem and a single repository that we're reading from or writing to, it's not as complicated. You don't need all of the other stuff going on, all right? And so, I think we're slowly heading down that path. So, any other questions? Oh, I did forget the final slide that I wanted to show is, basically this is our licensing model, and the net of this is that we have several free versions that are free for commercial use and download and use. And as of, I think, Gemstone 3.4.3, our GBS product is part of the license, all right? So you can use GBS with free versions of Gemstone. So for example, the VA Pi or the VisualWorks Pi could sit down and run on a Pi, have the client running on a Pi, and then connect to Gemstone, and do that all with the free edition of Gemstone. So so that's a possibility. And then we have a variety of, and then we, obviously the big customers talk to us, and we'd love to see people be successful. But this is, the idea of the free versions is to let people, start playing with it, use it for their own applications, get their business started. If the business takes off, great. If the business doesn't take off, you didn't spend a lot of money on Gemstone. So, yes.
What do you consider to be the minimum infrastructure to set up a useful development?
Well, if you sit down and look at this, 10 gigs of disk, we got a gigabyte of shared page cache. So, and that's the maximum, okay? I think, you can run on a laptop. I mean, we do run on a Mac as development version. So Macs are perfectly fine as getting started for small apps. So
you can talk about you can download the VM, whatever, that you can use with the VM player on your laptop.
Oh yeah.
Glassfish, for example, right? Works perfectly fine.
Which one?
With Glassfish.
Glassfish?
Whatever.
Yeah, Seaside. Yeah, there's another whole series of slides that I haven't written. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say just any old laptop would actually work as a perfectly fine thing. All right, because you have very small shared page caches, half a gig or less, and those all work. And the thing about the shared page cache is that if your database is a terabyte and you've got a small shared page cache, it works. It's just slow, So SD disks make things a lot faster.
I didn't run Gemstone on a virtual machine running in VMware on a PC laptop, Windows laptop.
Yeah. And I think the Windows 10 has Ubuntu 18.04 as part of it, and Gemstone can run in that VM. And or it's not a VM; it's actually an implementation of Ubuntu in Windows. And and you can tell because they don't support 32-bit executables in that. Yes.
I used a little internuke, had a situation center on there, several VMs, and the Gemstone VM outperformed a Faro MongoDB installed on my local machine still. So it doesn't really need a lot of resources.
Yeah.
It runs since 10 years without any problems. Yeah. And as a comment here, this is the only company I know where you get a lot for sharing your email address with them. So you get this limited license.
Yes.
I never received a single email from them.
Yes.
Ever.
It's not a spam. It's not a spam filter. It's actually to give you the license for that. But I would recommend that you can kick up. But I mean, this is going to work for a lot of applications. In the early days of supporting Seaside, all right. I think I'm trying to remember what the size of the machine was, but you could do, I've got some blog posts that date back to 2008, 2009 on, I think it's called Gemstone Soup. And I've got performance discussions about what goes on, using the free version basically, and doing quite a bit of, high-speed stuff. So, you can do and yes, because we're all memory based to a large extent, and if you can get everything into memory, we run a lot faster. And the part that, if we look at the gem in Gemstone, this gem is only working on a small working set. So when the Smalltalk garbage collection runs, you're not running over your whole 1.5 gigabyte image, all right? You only run over the working set. So it tends to be, and when I did performance with Seaside, all right, Gemstone kind of hits a peak and just sits there because your working set is fairly constant, the garbage collection times are constant, and you don't have the ups and downs as with everything in the image. having to garbage collect that as part of the image. Now, Gemstone has garbage collection, but it doesn't for the repository as itself, but that's not run as part of your gem. That's an offline process that you can run on weekends to do what we call an MFC, and it garbage collects your database. So your garbage collection, objects will keep collecting in here until you run an MFC, and it's your job to run the MFC. So, any other questions? Okay. Oh.
Just a comment. I've used Gemstone and I've used other interfaces to relational databases. And oh my God, it's very nice to be able to say, here's my Smalltalk object.
Yeah.
Here's this that.
Yeah. So the model of doing this is you can rely on the server to perform server-side work, all right, and jobs that run in the database, as opposed to having to have your client suck all the data into the client, or like in an Oracle database or whatever, do you do your query, work your way through the query, pulling parts of the data in and doing your operation. You can do that all in Smalltalk in Gemstone. So you just write regular Smalltalk code and you're off to the races.
No. The Gemstone itself can also talk to the relational database.
Yes. Right. I think I have the picture, but I won't mess around. There's another picture I decided not to that had that link. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks a lot. Do I want to turn this on?